Hi guys, it's Starlene. I'm trying to connect Mark here so we can get talking. Mark, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Great, we're here. We're going to talk about in this show, which was going to be on YouTube, but I had a lot of technical difficulties here getting the double camera thing going on YouTube, but now on the radio, which is awesome because we've done radio shows like this in the past, which have been really cool. This is going to be the astrology for the year ahead of 2020. There's a lot going on, a lot to talk about, so I'm excited about it. So thank you guys for coming. So Mark, tell me what's going on with you. Like, where can we find you online and all that jazz? We can get that through and get into the astrology for the year.
You can find me at www.rabbitholeastrology.com, and
Awesome.
or you can email me at metheny1984@yahoo.com. That's METHNY 1984.
Awesome. And you actually do astrological consultations, and I know you're in Ohio, and you do, I think you do classes and such in Ohio as well?
Yeah, not as many as before, but I do occasional classes and lectures and speak at some of the expos and, private consultations, parties, general
Awesome.
astrological announcement.
Yeah, and my technologically crazy person right now is going to figure out the YouTube thing, and we're going to be able to do more shows, like do video. We're back to the old Blog Talk Radio where we did our shows in the past, and this is kind of exciting. So we have a lot to talk about this year coming up. I know everybody has been going through a lot of stuff in 2019 leading up to this really strong conjunction that we're having with Saturn and Pluto next month, and we have a lot to talk about. So I guess we'll go ahead and dig right in. By the way, if you don't already know me, I am Starlene Breiter. You can find my website at rockstarastrologer.com. I'm also a professional astrologer as well. So let's start with January. Do you want to start with January, or did you want to say something like as far as the actual whole year? Like, do you think it's going to be like as difficult as 2019 has been for us, or do you think it's going to kind of calm down a little bit?
There will be no calming down at this juncture in time.
Well, you're honest.
So,
okay.
So at this point in time, if you want the kind of the to cut out all the side stuff, I guess. If you know your chart a little bit, what you're going to want to look for is where does 20 to 22 degrees Capricorn hit in your chart, and look for the trines and the squares to that, because that's going to be the key area this year is the Capricorn energy, specifically right around 20 to 22 degrees. So if you have any trines, squares, anything. So Libra, Cancer, and Aries, along with Capricorn, are going to be the four biggest signs that will be influenced most by this. I believe our friend Diana posted that 1250 or 1258 AD was the last time there was a Jupiter, Saturn, Pluto stellium that we had with those three in Capricorn. So I was a bit young then, so I don't remember that too clearly, but that's just telling you how big and how unique this energy is. Also, Taurus and Virgo will probably be getting, and potentially Capricorn will be getting the biggest boost in energy, we'll say. If you have planets in the 20 to 22 degrees of Taurus, Capricorn, or Virgo, the Taurus and Virgos will be getting a trine from Jupiter, Saturn, and Pluto this year to any planets you have, and that you can expand it out past the 20 to 22 degree area, but as kind of unprecedented energy that anyone in their lifetime has had. if you have planets at those degrees.
Yeah, totally. Thank you for pointing that out. If you don't know your chart, we were going to do this on YouTube, as you guys might have figured out, but I did upload a video a while ago. It was just how to look up your chart online for free. If you don't know your chart, you can look up your chart. You can watch the video. I'll link my YouTube page in the description of this audio, this Blog Talk Radio. And I plan on hopefully being able to upload this video to YouTube, just so at least it's an audio that we can listen to. But anyway, my point is I want you to look up your chart so you can see what Mark is talking about and see where planets are at 22-ish degrees of Capricorn or the other signs that he said, because they're making these, energetic patterns here. And there's a lot going on with us. Like anybody that has any planets at 22 Capricorn, I'm sure you're feeling it already, but you can imagine that you are reforming yourself. You are coming from the universe is stripping you down naked with that Saturn energy, and then Pluto is coming along and reforming you. And if you fight against it, that's when you're going to have the trouble. But if you go with the flow and you just keep, figuring out, poking holes until you figure out the way that it should work for you, then you'll have a much easier time, if that makes sense. So it's a lot, but we're going to get into that a little bit more. But I did want to point out that if you don't know your chart already, just go ahead and look up that chart. How to look up your birth chart 101 is the name of the video. It's really easy to find on my page. You can look that up, and then you can follow along with what we're saying. You might want to listen to this a couple times, that sort of thing throughout the year. So let's dig into January, Mark. January 3rd, we have Mars entering Sagittarius. How do you feel about Mars into Sag?
So we just now are having right now we're just having the first few days where there's not been any planets in Sagittarius since, for 4 years, because we just came through Saturn in Sag, which was 2.5 years, and then just came out of a year-long Jupiter in Sag, and then we just had all the inner planets in Sag after that. So Sag is expansion. Sagittarius, or Jupiter, which rules Sagittarius, is about expansion. So whenever we have Mars in Sag, there will be an optimistic drive to expand things past their current areas. And then hopefully since we have all this Capricorn energy now, that will help lend some focus and some grounding to that energy so that it can be productive.
Mars, it's a fire planet entering into a fire sign, and it doesn't rule Sagittarius, but it's definitely giving us a boost of wanting to think outside of the box a little bit, wanting to put our energy outside of the box, something that's not necessarily just what we've been doing, I always think of a Scorpio energy as of course, the obsessive compulsive kind of energy that is typically archetypally Scorpio, but also that it has this great ability to focus and to almost to that obsessive level. It can get that way. And now it's moving into Sagittarius, so it's hey, okay, our energy is being shifted from this really intense, I want to focus on this one thing, one project, one idea, one person, to now we're getting an opportunity to focus on things that are outside of that realm, which is good, put our energy towards it. So I think that's kind of a great way to start a new year, because we've been, it's been heavy, and it's not, like you said, it's not going to get instantly better, but it's definitely, it's definitely something for us to work with. And if we work with it, it gets easier, right? So what about Jupiter conjunct the South Node in Capricorn on the 8th of January?
Okay, so Jupiter is the ruling planet of Sagittarius. So again, that's expansion, higher learning, wisdom. So the South Node is past karmic stuff. So again, I guess I should preface this. All of this stuff we're going over is where the planets currently are. This is not necessarily in individual people's charts. So I guess I meant to clarify that up front. So this is kind of the general energies we're talking about that are out there. You may get slightly different results depending on how it's hitting in your chart as far as how powerful these transits or planetary lineups are.
Yeah, I like to call that the collective, right? The collective energy, because, yeah, it could be affecting me more intensely because it's happening on my whatever planet or vice versa. Yeah, so I like to call it in that sense the collective energy. But, yeah, it makes sense to clarify that too.
Yeah, so this is kind of the energy you'll be running into out there, and your mileage may vary. So Jupiter conjunct the South Node is, again, the South Node is past karmic stuff. So with Jupiter conjunct the South Node, it could bring in people from your past, but it's also very likely you tap into energies or talents or things that you have not, that you've lost track of, or maybe need further development, or things you need to recontact with.
Would you say that's something that maybe like say, for instance, that you were in your youth playing a musical instrument, and all of a sudden, something comes up that the musical instrument comes back to you, and would it be something like that? Do you think could it be something like that comes back into your awareness and you start playing it again? Would it be something like that because of the South Node, or do you think it goes like deeper, or maybe it's levels even? Yeah,
no, it could absolutely be something like that, or an area of study that you started a long time ago and then dropped off. Further development of your intuition. That's all kind of Jupiter Sag stuff. Further learning in an area of interest, recapping into talents.
Okay, and that happens at 8 Capricorn, right? So if you have planets around the 8 degrees of Capricorn or 8 degrees of any of the cardinal signs, I think it would affect you more. I mean, really, if you have any planets at 8 degrees of anything, it would be affecting you, be connecting in some way or another, looking at it from that perspective. So, okay, moving on to the next thing. On the 10th, we have 2 things going on that are super intense in January. We have Uranus station direct at 2 Taurus. What do you have about that, Mark? What do you think that's going to cause collectively for us?
So this is where I probably differ from most astrologers. I very closely follow the planetary stations, especially the outer planet stations, because those are the real, when people talk about energy shifts and things like that, the first thing I do when I look at a new year is, I remember doing one of these shows or something, is I look at when the outer planet stations are, because that's when the real stuff happens. So,
right,
because Uranus is change, chaos, thinking outside of the box, disruption. It's also freedom from the known, to quote probably the best Uranus book by Jeffrey Wolf Green. It's called Uranus, Freedom from the Known. So Uranus is how we think outside of the box, and it's rebellion and change. It can be disruption. Things that throw us outside of our normal routine, to expect disruptions, technical issues, that kind of thing. On kind of a global level, if you follow the goodness, my brain's not working. Moon in Pisces. If you follow earthquakes and seismology and stuff, we frequently have the big earthquakes, big events, big acts of rebellion, usually very big, shocking news events happen around the Uranus stations. And it just so happens that on that same day, So the amount of energy on January 10th is insane, and it's far above what we experience on a normal level, because there's also a lunar eclipse at 20 Cancer, or it's like 1954 Cancer, something like that, on the same day. So we have a Uranus station and a lunar eclipse on the same day. So the amount of energy, like, I don't care what your chart looks like. Don't have any. If you have an operation or something planned for the January 10th, I'd move that. I don't care what your birth chart is. I would not plan on. I'm leaving that day open just to deal with disruption.
Right.
Is my advice on that kind of. That's just entirely too much energy for one day. On the emotional level, because we have an eclipse, and on the global level, because of the Uranus station. I assure you the news cycle that day will be insane.
And the lunar eclipses, at 20 Cancer, like you said, and, eclipses to me, it could be somewhat like you're driving down a road and then there's like a fork and you take it a different direction. And that's what eclipses kind of like are to me, like a metaphor of it. And you don't know what direction you're going in. You just have the fork and you're just going somewhere in a different, not straight like you were. You just like, you have no choice. You're this or that, and so they can be pretty intense, especially with the Uranus station. And it's interesting that you brought up the idea of the Uranus station being in Taurus and the idea of seismology and stuff like that, because Taurus is an earth sign and Taurus is very tangible. So it wouldn't surprise me if there was some kind of shifting in the, earthly plane on that day. Uranus station in and of itself, I think that Uranus station can be very disruptive to people that are unstable. I know you and I have talked about this before, where people go and, go shoot up things and do crazy things like that. I've seen that, and I've seen it happen around Uranus or Pluto stations, or when they're close together even, it's even worse. But at the same time, that could be something that happens during, I'm not predicting that because I don't think astrology predicts it, so to speak, but people feel that, especially those that are already feeling unstable, feel unstable. They feel that way. They feel like there's an intensity there. So, the 10th is definitely a day that I think everybody should try to kind of like allow themselves to be peaceful as much as possible and put out fires if necessary. And it is a Friday, so hopefully the Friday will be okay for everyone. But it does seem like things will be shifting in that sense. And, the thing of it is if we hold on too tightly, then we don't allow growth to happen, right? If we hold on too tightly, that kind of keeps us stable where we're at. So let's move on to the 12th. We have 12th. This is the day Saturn conjuncts Pluto at 22 Capricorn. Oh, my gosh, I'm dying to hear what you have to say about this.
Yeah. Right. So again, when Saturn and Pluto move so slowly, like Saturn stays in the sign for 2.5 years, Pluto stays in the sign for 16 to 20 years. So these Saturn-Pluto conjunctions only happen every 20 years or so. And Saturn rules Capricorn. So when a planet is in the sign that it rules, its energy is even more powerful. So even just to back up for a second, that Uranus station, when planet stations, that the energy of that planet is more powerful for a week on either end, because it's changing speed, so it's kind of slowing down. So we have that in that same range as the exact Saturn-Pluto conjunction. And if you'll notice, at the beginning I kind of said about 20 to 22 degrees Capricorn being the most important degrees this year. Cancer is the opposite sign of Capricorn. So we have that, not only we have the Uranus station on the 10th, we have the lunar eclipse at 20 Cancer, which is opposite of Capricorn, and then that Saturn-Pluto conjunction at 22 Capricorn. the energy level in that time period is so ridiculous off the hook that, and it doesn't have to be bad stuff. If there's a breakthrough that needs to be made, or a change in career, or something that needs a lot of energy to be fixed or corrected, or you have a really big project that you need to do, the energy level there is beyond what we're normally beyond what we're going to normally run into. So this is it's going to be extremely disruptive to some people. So just when I see things like this coming, I try not to, as I guess this is going to be more philosophy than astrology. When I see things like this coming, I try not to spend my energy judging, good or bad effects or whatever. I try to look for the message behind what's happening. So if a certain area kind of blows up, then I look at that as, okay, it's time to change things in that area, or it's time to change my routines or what I'm doing in whatever area is affected. So, it's easy to get involved in the emotional daily stuff, but I try to use, these big energy periods as trying to see what have I been doing that no longer works? Where can I restructure things, where they weren't stable, or how can I restructure things so that my life flows better or whatnot? And I try not to put too much focus on whatever little upsets there may be that day. I just try to look like, okay, this is a message for me to redirect something that I'm putting energy into.
Yeah.
How about that for dancing?
Hey, you know what? I like that, though. Diana and I were talking in the chat. I said, she was saying that, just what you said, Jupiter is still close to the South Node on the 10th, with that energy, just to recap that. But so much is going on. Either we're going to shift or we're going to be pushed, and if the thing of it is you're right. Don't allow the little things how Mercury retrograde, this is not Mercury retrograde, but I always tell people when the little Mercury retrograde ridiculousness happens, laugh it off, because it'll keep you from going crazy, because it can make you a little nutty when things go a little haywire. When this happens and there are things that aren't so deep, or you need to introspect and say, okay, well, this is not working for me for some reason or another. What can I do to change it, instead of getting into the emotional aspect? I love how you brought that into it, because I think we tend to do that, and we forget that we need to realize these challenges are being brought into our awareness so that we can change. And instead of going, I want to stick and stay to the old, or I want to be all frustrated and emotional because it's not going the way I wanted to, we can look at the problem and say, how can I fix it to make it better? And I think that's cool that, Saturn and Pluto are actually conjuncting in Capricorn, because Capricorn has that energy of, I want to make things better. I want to make things right. I want to make things functional. You know what I mean? So it's yes, it's not going to be easy for those of us that are holding, and I say us because, who knows, I may be one of those people, and in some levels I think we all are, I want to hold on to something that isn't working, but at the same time, I also am aware of this, and I think that's why I love astrology so much, because I can say, okay, I'm aware of this, and it's an opportunity for me to just figure out how can I shift things to make it better for myself, as opposed to still holding on to the old, or not wanting to move forward into something that is better or healthier for me. So yeah, I think this is, and I've said this a lot on my weekly forecast videos that I do. It's it's also like on a global level, on a collective level, so to speak, because we're all being asked to do this. We're all being asked to shift something within ourselves. We're all being asked to help the planet, help, society level up. Like we can look around. I mean, you got to be blind not to be able to see, and even blind people I'm sure can see because they can hear or whatever, but not to make fun or anything, but like seriously, there's issues that need to be attended to in the society, and if we don't do that, if we don't all take a part of it and step up into it, then we're holding on to the old, or we're just being blasé and not caring, and it's opportunity. This is an opportunity for us to actually shift and to grow. This is a really great chance to change, to have that drive to change, that compulsion to change, because that's Pluto is very compulsive. I look at Pluto in that sense, like very compulsive, that drive to change, to make something different, and Saturn to me, like the function of Saturn to me is like, it really strips us down. It makes us completely like naked. It just brings us down to the bare bones. It doesn't care about frivolous stuff. It doesn't care about superficialities. And Pluto is like this metamorphosis we're going through. So, them conjuncting, it's like giving us all that chance to say, oh, okay, where can I let go of the things that don't matter and embrace the things that do on the next chapter of my life. I can't tell you how many times I've said that to people, but I think it's so important for us to all think about it from that perspective, instead of getting all stuck up in the, oh my gosh, this is going on, it's chaos, da, 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 da. No, okay, that may be your situation. We all have different situations in life, but at the same time, we can say, okay, I don't have to get caught up in the drama of it. I can actually think logically and calmly and change and figure out what the change is. And I think maybe you can tell me what your opinion is on this. Those people that are fixed, like myself, I'm quite a fixed human, have more of a difficult time with that change, like that, embracing that change, so sometimes that happens, or maybe even the people with the 22 Capricorn, 20-ish Capricorn, 20-ish, 22-ish Cancer, are that they're the ones that are maybe going to have the most challenging part of this if they don't open their awareness.
Yes. So we're kind of creatures of habit, and it's easy to get stuck into our routines and stuff. Sometimes we kind of get forced to re-examine how we do things, and just because we get used to doing things doesn't necessarily mean that that's the right way to do them.
Right.
And so these big energy periods can be opportunities to look at what maybe needs to be changed. So I know I can't stand having I set my routines up for a reason, because it helps things flow better. But then after a while, you find that you're just doing things because that's how you've always done them, and they're not really that helpful anymore. These big transits can be opportunities to fix some of that stuff.
So moving on from Saturn conjunct Pluto, which I think is like the highlight of this year, what do you think about that, Mark?
Yeah, and we actually have three of. I think we have two exact Saturn-Pluto conjunctions, I believe, and we have 3 Jupiter-Pluto conjunctions. So yeah, just that whole area around that 20 to 22 degrees Capricorn. And when you throw in that eclipse at 20 Cancer, which is exactly opposite. So too, on that, jumping back again to that eclipse is opposite Saturn and Pluto. So that's right. I would really encourage you to, if people have a copy of their chart, I would really strongly encourage them to look at where 20 to 22 Capricorn, Cancer, and then Aries and Libra, which are the other 2 cardinal signs. I would strongly suggest looking at where those are in your chart.
And it will help to shed light if you have a planet near those particular degrees. It will help to understand how this is going to personally influence you. And of course, you can always consult with Mark or myself about it, but it will definitely give you insight as to what's going on and how it's affecting you personally. But we are all affected by this, and we can see it on a global scale, I believe. Okay, so let's move on to the 16th of January. We have Mercury entering into the sign of Aquarius. So what do you think of Mercury entering into the sign of Aquarius, Mark?
So again, Aquarius is a sign that is ruled by Uranus. So Aquarius is outside the box thinking, breaks us out of our routines. Aquarius rules, Uranus rules technology. So maybe changing ways we communicating in different ways, mentally thinking outside of the box.
Yeah, so it'll give us a chance to like even think outside of the box further than what we've kind of like already got ourselves into with this whole Saturn conjunct Pluto. And a few days later, our mind is put into a space of like, now we want to think even deeper outside of the box. Maybe it comes to some solutions that we've found a problem for earlier in the month. So I can see that kind of rolling out like that. I think Mercury in Aquarius is nice because it is an air sign. Mercury, what element is Mercury? Mercury is air?
I mean, to me, it leans a little more towards the air since it's also the ruler of Gemini. Personally, my belief, and I'm sure people will kill me for this, but I think Chiron should be the ruler of Virgo. But
I actually agree with you on that one. I've had conversations with others, but, you know, I wasn't sure because Mercury, I've always thought Mercury's kind of like, you know, I don't know, has multiple, you know, how Mercury's so changeable and stuff, but Mercury, you know, because it does rule over an earth sign, Virgo, too. So but Mercury in Aquarius, I think, is good because Mercury in Aquarius is kind of like we have our minds in a space of like we are being able to kind of open our minds up to ideas that are new that will be helpful. And then moving on to the 18th of January, we have Venus moving into the sign of Capricorn. So Venus into the sign of Capricorn, I think, you know, Venus is going to be joining all these other planets, these big players in Capricorn. But Venus does move fairly fast considering Jupiter, Saturn, and Pluto are slow. But Venus is moving into the sign of Capricorn on the 18th. And what do you want to talk about with that, Mark?
Capricorn is about like stability and predictability and no nonsensical type things. So when Venus is in Capricorn, we're a little more stringent with our pocketbooks. One of the concepts I've come to associate with Capricorn as I've gotten older is the Capricorn likes to see results for things. So when Venus is in Capricorn, sometimes people are a little more critical with their partners or whatnot. So just, I guess, a reminder to keep some balance in that area. But also just like you're a little more spendthrifty when Venus is in Capricorn. You're not looking for all the luxury items and whatnot. They want a little more grounded thinking.
Yeah, it's kind of like reality, more grounded kind of things, more practical, I guess, is that's the way I would put it. And then moving on to the 20th of January, the sun enters into the sign of Aquarius. The sun in Aquarius has a much different energy than Capricorn. I know that Aquarius is ruled by ancient ruler is Saturn, and I'm an Aquarius. I definitely identify with the Saturn energy, but I also identify with the Uranian energy of Aquarius, which is the modern ruler of Aquarius. What do you feel about the sun entering into the sign of Aquarius, Mark?
It's the same kind of thing as with Mercury. It's that thinking outside of the box. Where can we change things or get things to flow differently? I find Aquarius energy needs a lot of mental stimulation. Aquarius likes different ideas and different ways of being. And then this, too, this kind of comes, you have the holidays and we have like all these planets in Capricorn and stuff. And we just kind of like trudge through stuff. That Aquarius is kind of a wake-up energy.
And in a sense, the way I look at January, and I guess we'll recap at the end, but I feel like it gets a little bit easier towards the end because the Aquarian energy starts to bring in a lighter energy. And this is my experience with like planets that are in like light degrees of any sign, but Capricorn in particular can get really super duper heavy. So when the sun is in the end of Capricorn, I'm always like, oh, low energy. It hits Aquarius, and I feel like different. I feel like someone flipped the switch, and I just change. I know that I'm an Aquarius, and the sun is making aspects to my natal sun at that point. Plus, I have an Aquarius stellium, but at the same time, I feel like it's not just me. Yes, it's hit me personally hard, but it's also like everybody. I think that we are giving a lighter feeling, and I've talked to clients that don't have their Aquarius sun that actually have felt the same way. So I feel like it may not lift completely the heaviness because that Saturn-Pluto conjunction is still in play at that time. I don't know how far apart they are from each other on the 20th, but they're not that far apart. This energy is going to be lasting, a good part of the year. But I think the sun in Aquarius is a little reprieve for us. So moving on to the 27th of January, we have Venus conjunct Neptune at 16 degrees Pisces. So, Mr. Neptune, Mark, I'd love to hear what you have to say about Venus conjunct Neptune.
Also, I got pointed out to me, I made a little typo that January 18th is Venus entering Pisces, not Capricorn. I went the wrong direction there. So, so it is,
wow, okay.
And yeah. So this is Venus entering Pisces, which is going to be pretty much the opposite of what I just said with the Venus in Capricorn. So the moon is in Pisces. So I know how funny is that? Moon's in Pisces today, so critical thinking maybe not at the top of the list of things for me.
It's hysterical. Yes, it's actually hysterical because not just the moon in Pisces, but I literally just had my Venus return. So I'm like, oh yeah, of course my Venus is in Aquarius. So I'm like, yeah, I didn't even think about Venus being in Capricorn. Yeah, but you're right. Venus in Pisces, it's a lot sweeter. It's a lot more lovely. It's a lot more, more, like you said, it's the opposite of Capricorn. Maybe not exactly, but, there is definitely more an intuition there, a sweeter intuition, a sweeter connection. It's almost like I think of rainbows and unicorns or something. Yeah.
Right. So I'll just back up and combine those two. The Venus entering Pisces and then the Venus conjunct Neptune. That is so a difficult part of Venus conjunct Neptune and Pisces is people will be very, very, very sensitive. So yeah, Venus conjunct Neptune and Pisces is more like spiritual love and fantasy and kind of getting in touch with our feel-gooderies. I think before we called Neptune and Pisces pink fluffy clouds, I think, on one of our shows.
We did.
So, because we're nerds like that.
Pink fluffy clouds. And with Neptune there, with Venus there, it's like, yeah, pink fluffy, lovey-dovey, sweet. It would be a great day or a great time to do some kind of gesture to love of some sort, or even float on a pink fluffy cloud, or even do some kind of artwork. I think, that connection with Venus and Neptune, which will last a few days.
Right.
I don't know exactly. It'll last maybe even a couple of weeks depending on your orb, but you'll wanna art. If you're an artistic person, I'm super artistic, so I might just get out my paints and go crazy or something. But yeah, if you are that may just flow from you naturally. That might be something. And I don't have anything in Pisces, but I think that will be a vibe that I'll try to grab a hold of and utilize, for myself. So Venus conjunct Neptune is pretty nice. Yeah.
Right. And
so
for our friends for our friend Diana, Venus conjunct Neptune, definitely a good day to go to a concert.
So moving on to the 28th, Mars squaring Neptune. Mars is at 16 Sag, Pisces. So what are you thinking about Mars squaring Neptune?
Yeah, so Mars is action and aggression. Neptune is pink fuzzy clouds, like we mentioned. So again, it kind of falls in with the Venus conjunct Neptune on one level. The Mars, I'll just be blatant on this. Mars square Neptune is bad decision making. Mars is action, instinctual behavior. Neptune is dream life, intuition, fantasy. So Mars square Neptune is like driving really fast through a fog bank. So to me, be aware of your actions. That energy is very good for like artistic things and directing energy into your dreams or things you want to manifest, because manifestation is highly Neptunian. So, but it's not a good time for like risky behavior or dangerous activities. In fact, it's very bad time for that.
It could be like a sense of like not being aware of something that's a Neptune fog, because Neptune can be the pink fluffy clouds, but it can also be like a haze or something like you're not really seeing. So yeah, and that Mars can just be like, hey, let's go run off this cliff. Not a good idea. Go run, but make sure you know there's a path.
Right, because that Mars in Sag is very impetuous also.
Yeah.
So I have to jump in. I have to jump in and make one other suggestion here. My second mistake of the day. I sent you the wrong attachment. So I sent you the really, really lengthy one instead of the shortened one of stuff for us to go over. Since we just spent almost an hour going over January, I think we need to skip the Sun, Mercury, Venus things, except for the stations, and just hit on the other stuff, or else this is going to be like a 14-hour marathon.
I know. I was actually thinking maybe we'll have to do it half and half. But you know what? I actually do have the short one. So I'm going to go ahead and skip to February.
Yeah.
We need to talk about January. So I don't mind that we did that because, hey, January is a big deal, right? So we'll just go ahead and start with February. I have the short one. Okay. So thank you for that because, I would have just kept rolling. So February 16th, we have Mercury retrograde. Mercury retrograde, gotta love that. It's at 12 Pisces. So Mercury retrograde for 3 weeks. It stays in a retrograde phase. What do you have to talk about Mercury retrograde?
All the Mercury retrogrades this year are in water signs. So we have our Mercury retrograde this year are in Pisces, Cancer, and Scorpio. Now they dip into the air signs for a couple days, but most of the Mercury retrograde periods this year are all in water signs. So for this one in Pisces, that is getting in touch with your intuition and paying attention to what you're manifesting. The point of Mercury retrogrades is to slow down because we get going so fast on the things and we stop kind of really paying attention. We kind of go into the automated mode. So Mercury retrograde is to get us to slow down and think about, what we're doing. And on another level, people with Mercury retrograde in their birth chart, if you want to get into the reincarnation thing, people have Mercury retrograde natally because they were too mentally hyper in previous incarnations, and so this is to help the natives that have Mercury retrograde in their birth chart to get them to slow down a little bit and to not be as mentally scattered or all over the place. So that's kind of what the function of the Mercury retrogrades are. And being that this is in Pisces, this is to get us to shut up all the noise in our heads and make sure we're listening to our intuition and to messages we're getting.
That's definitely a great way to put that. And just to like piggyback a little bit on that is like, I really think that we all have that intuition. We all have that ability to tap into our third eye, if you will, or however you want to interpret that intuition. It's like a muscle, right? Like our third eye, or that thing about us that's intuitive. And this is an opportunity for us to do that, because sometimes we're so externalized. That's that Mercury energy that we're outwardly thinking. When it goes retrograde and into Pisces, of course, it's like we have a chance to work on that intuitive muscle. So I would suggest things like meditation. If you don't already have a practice, like this would be a great time to get practicing. I mean, you should already have a practice, but if you don't, this would be a great time to utilize that, because it would be helpful. As Diane's saying in the chat, maybe music and a cocktail or two, meditation, and sitting by the ocean. Are you coming to visit me, Diane? Come on in February. It'll be nice here. But yeah, like that's exactly it. You know, relax, enjoy, like really, but go within. Don't be externalized in that sense. So yeah, I totally agree with that, and I think that's an awesome way to put it. And we get so hung up on these, like I think we do, and it's kind of like pop astrology, which I know you and I are both not pop astrologers, but like, you know, sometimes we and I joke about it a lot too, but like I know everybody does, but you know, like sometimes we get so hung up on these like little Mercury retrograde annoyances that we forget that we need to do the work that is presented to us, like I just mentioned about the meditation and so on and so forth, you know, as opposed to, you know, just going, oh man, I lost my keys in my car, or whatever, you know, whatever silly goofy thing that you end up doing, you know. So trying to bring it back to that and keep that in the forefront of your mind is important, in my opinion.
This is just like a really brief Mercury retrograde tip. Well, actually, this is an all transit tip. Because I know I have 3 planets in Pisces, and I have a gigantic water grand trine in my chart. So my natural state of being is not in my 3D body. So I dummy proof everything as much as I can, because I know that I'm a dummy. And my natural tendency is to not be in my body. So like with the Mercury retrogrades, I will double check texts, double check emails, double check stuff that I've tried to make myself go over things 2 or 3 times, so that I'm not doing stuff like scheduling an appointment during during a vorticourse moon, or stuff that I'll just kind of instinctually, okay, let's do this day or whatever. But I try to double check myself as much as possible, or delay decisions so that I have a chance to go over stuff, so that I'm not like screwing myself by setting, something up on a day with like really horrible energy or something like that. So that's just a tip I do for myself.
And I agree with that. And I'm looking at the transits of the day, and I don't know if either of us looked at this. We just wanted the 31st because it was the day before the brand new year. It does happen at 7:15 p.m. Eastern time, but the moon does conjunct with Neptune today, and we're having all these like weird, goofy things happening. So it's kind of funny when you think about it.
This would be a perfect example of something where I picked a stupid day to do.
It's okay, like, hey, I'm actually having fun, and I think, the listener's probably getting a kick out of our silliness anyway. Oh my goodness. Okay, so let's move on to February 26th. The next big thing we're going to talk about is Mars making a conjunction to the South Node, and that happens at 6 degrees of Capricorn. So Mars South Node. Oh, insert evil music. Just kidding. What are you thinking about that?
So Mars is ruled by Aries. I'm sorry, Mars rules Aries, and Aries to Capricorn forms a square by nature. Capricorn and Aries are square to each other. So that means that Mars will need a little bit of adjustment, and because Mars is very impetuous, Capricorn is very kind of duty-oriented. So on the 16th, Mars enters Capricorn, and then on the 26th there, we have Mars conjunct the South Node in Capricorn. So again, Mars in Capricorn likes to see results for its actions. And so Mars conjunct the South Node, again, that comes back to revisiting things that need revisited or reworked, or do we need to get back in connection with. Just a weird thing that I found is Mars conjunct the South Node is kind of like very accident prone. I've noticed during the last few transits. It's maybe kind of where we are acting out or acting instinctually, where we maybe don't need to anymore, or where we need to revisit our motivations or whatnot. And also, too, it can be, tapping back into something we've lost, track of.
Maybe like putting some energy to it, because Mars is all about our energy. Maybe like putting some energy to something, like you said, we lost track of. That makes sense. And that will, of course, be affecting people with like planets that are close to 6 degrees Capricorn or Cancer as well. That's an interesting energy there. It can be like, it's interesting because I always think of like accidents as Uranus, Mars, but definitely the idea of Mars possibly causing accidents of the South Node, because we're almost like we're rushing through things and we should be a little bit slower. So maybe that's an advice for that day, to like move a little bit slower, more mindfully through things, because we can get a little bit tripped up if we're too in the past, because that could be the South Node. Is there such a thing as a soft node? The South Node. That could be the South Node energy, Oh my goodness. Okay, so yes, Fiddle D Bob, nice to meet you. Thanks for coming into the chat. You said it's 3 a.m. here in Whitsunday Islands. Yes, we'll take some coffee because we're under the Pisces Neptune energy over here. And Happy New Year. Happy New Year to you too. Thanks for coming to join us in the chat. So that's Mars conjunct South Node, I think, in a nutshell. So we're going to move on to March 2020. Can you believe it's 2020? Dude, do you remember where you were like in the year 2000 when it passed? Like,
I don't.
It seems like yesterday. I do exactly remember where I was in that moment. It's weird. I don't know. For some reason, that one stuck in my brain. All the other New Year's, they kind of blend, but that one really did. So it's kind of crazy to think that was 20 years ago for me, Like, are we getting any younger? Okay, I'll stop being silly. March 2020. We are on the 9th of March. We have Mercury stationed direct at 26 Aquarius. So Mercury does Aquarius for just a couple of days, like Mark said earlier, and then it goes back into Pisces as it travels back over the place that it once was before it went retrograde. It passed over twice. This will be its third pass, going over the Pisces energy, the beginning part of Pisces energy, I think to about 14 Pisces, if I'm not mistaken. So what do you have to say about that, Mark?
So that's Mercury stationing direct. So it's only going to be in Aquarius for just I think 4 or 5 days there during the retrograde and then direct. So again, just the theme there is it's like a double Mercury and Pisces transit. We pretty much it goes halfway through once, and then we'll go all the way through then. So again, Mercury and Pisces is just artistic stuff, intuition, how we're manifesting stuff, music, arts. Those are all Pisces Neptunian things. Again, but part of the Pisces energy that I think about is just kind of like tuning into the non-3D signals and signs and stuff that we get. So I guess that kind of falls in with intuition, but we get all kind of signals from the universe, whether it's animals or people or songs or whatever. So I just try to have my antenna tuned to those signals and cues I get when like Mercury's in Pisces.
Yeah, Mercury station direction. Like it's always most powerful too. This is just a side note here. On all of the station direct and station retrograde times, in my opinion, I think if Mark agrees with me on that, this is pretty popular astrological idea that when a planet is station retrograde or station direct is when it's looking like it's still in the sky. It never really is still. There's an actual moment that it changes directions. But when it is in that very close to that moment where it changes directions, and because Mercury moves so fast, it's quicker than the other planets, like Pluto moves really slow, so its station direct lasts longer, right? So basically, when the planet is in that space, it's at its most powerful. So on that day of the 9th, when Mercury stations direct, you may notice more Mercury station or Mercury retrograde craziness going on. And if that's the case, try to find the humor. Try to not let it make you cuckoo. Try to like move past it, So I think that's an important part of, working through this energy.
Yes, agreed.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll move on to the 20th. Jupiter conjunct Mars at 22 Capricorn. We finally have Jupiter conjuncting Mars. I know we have so much Capricorn energy going on still in March. So what are you thinking about Jupiter conjunct Mars and 22 Capricorn?
So this is there's kind of a bundle of stuff there. So here, this should get me beat up if I'm not already going to get beat up. I don't look as January 1st as the new year. I don't even understand it. I kind of go by the old calendar that a few places still use. I look at March 19th or 20th as the new year because that's the beginning of the astrological year. I mean,
yeah.
To me, the rationale, because the sun is always at like 9 degrees Capricorn on January 1st. I mean, that's not the beginning of a season. That's not the beginning of a sign. I can't even comprehend it anymore. Right. So for me, the beginning of the astrological year is what I kind of look at as the new year. So I kind of look at March. This year, I think it's actually, I put March 20th on here. It's actually March 19th, I believe. So I kind of look at March 19th or 20th as the beginning of the new year. So it's actually 11:50 p.m. on March the 19th, because that's Aries is the first sign. It's the beginning, first day of spring, which is new life, rebirth. Also, March 20th is International Astrology Day. It's the beginning of the new zodiac year. It all just makes a lot more sense to me than January 1st, which just seems to be a arbitrary flipping of the calendar. So now that I've trashed the whole idea behind the show, the meaning of we have Jupiter. We have Jupiter conjunct Mars, and we also have Uranus trine the South Node exact on that day, and we have the beginning of the astrological new year, and then on the 21st we have Saturn entering Aquarius. So Saturn ending a 2.5-year cycle, except it's kind of retrograde back in there later. But so again, a tremendous amount of energy. Again, I kind of use that March 20th date as the beginning of the new year. So Jupiter is expansion. Jupiter expands anything it touches. Capricorn is duty, responsibility, wants results. Jupiter is expansion. And then with that Uranus trine the South Node, Uranus is outside the box thinking, and it's trine to the South Node. And so again, that's thinking outside of the box, rewiring our own brain, mixed with the Jupiter-Mars conjunction, which is an expansion of energy, Jupiter-Mars. And then that is on the day of the what I consider the new year. So to me, that's just a liberation, expansion. That's a lot of energy. And all of that stuff, Jupiter, Mars, and the South Node are all in Capricorn. Uranus is in Taurus, which is one of the other Earth signs. So that's just a whole bunch of Earth energy. And also, that Jupiter-Mars conjunction is not very far from where Pluto is. Pluto's at 24 Capricorn at that point. So that would be like one of the top 3 or 4 energy days of the year. That's a good day for new starts or for expanding your boundaries, thinking outside of the box, getting results. Those are all, that's tremendous energy there.
Yeah, I was thinking it's like a power day, and what it would be really great to do is if you wanted to start, on a personal level, if you wanted to start like a fitness regime then, because Mars is about our energy, physical energy too, and Jupiter is about expanding. So say you are already into fitness and you want to step up your game, then that would be a great day to start doing that, figuring out ways to do that. Not only is it our new year, because I agree with you on the new year part, because that's freaking our new year, period. I said in my video for this week that the new year that we're celebrating right now is arbitrary, and it doesn't have really much meaning, but it is the beginning of January, okay. But, I agree. Our new year is definitely this time. And it's so interesting that Jupiter, making this Mars, it's like our takeoff for us. It's like a chance for us to take off in a new direction. If you haven't already started an exercise regime, maybe that's what you want to do. Maybe you want to go dancing. Maybe, it doesn't have to be necessarily, something that, crazy, but like something where you're actually using your energy in a way that you don't necessarily use it now, and I think this would be, I always look at like, and I know you do too, you can look at anything as a birth chart, like any event or situation in your life as a birth chart. And this Jupiter conjunct Mars is like kind of saying, hey, okay, it's a chance for us to think outside the box of what we normally do with our energy, and Capricorn, I think, gives the tenacity to do that. It's a power day for sure. And then, moving on, you touched on this, I think, a little bit. The 21st, Saturn enters into the sign of Aquarius, which Saturn will be hanging out in Aquarius for a while. What are you thinking about Saturn entering into Aquarius, Mark?
Aquarius is the mad scientist of the zodiac. So
love it.
So with Saturn in there, Saturn is our 3D reality. It's how we structure things. So Saturn rules like physical structures, like buildings, our homes, where we are, offices where we go to work. That's also the structure of reality. So Saturn also has to do with how we structure our reality. It's not just like 3D concepts like buildings and governments and legal systems. So Saturn in Aquarius, with Aquarius being the mad scientist, how do we, with that Jupiter energy and the sun just having entered Aries, Saturn in Aquarius is, it can be upheaval, but it's like, how can I restructure my reality so that it works better for me? And two, kind of adding that into just having several weeks of Mercury in Pisces, where we figure out what we want to manifest, but don't really act on it because Mercury's retrograde. Then we have this Saturn in Aquarius building a new reality that maybe didn't make sense to us before, or restructuring things in a way we hadn't thought of before. And this will just kind of be like a precursor, because Saturn's going to go back into Capricorn later in the year, or kind of in the middle of the year. And then at the very end of the year, Saturn will move into Aquarius for the whole 2.5-year cycle.
It's interesting, too, as Saturn, starts in that Aquarian energy, it kind of gives us, Saturn is the ancient ruler of Aquarius, so I think it feels comfortable in Aquarius, but I also feel like it helps to straighten out the Aquarian energy, because the Aquarian energy is very Uranian as well. I see both sides of the coin in that, and it kind of gives a grounding energy to it. So I think the people that have planets in Aquarius will benefit from this. All of us will in the thought of Aquarian things that we are, Aquarians are tapping into the universe, the tapping into the ethereal realms, the connection to being in the very present moment, which I think you need to be in the present moment to get to that place of tapping into the ethereal realms, and I think Saturn will help to ground that energy for all of us, especially with people in Aquarius, that have planets in Aquarius, which leads me to Mars on the 31st, 10 more days later after that happens. Mars makes a conjunction to Saturn at 0 degrees Aquarius. So Saturn's still at 0 degrees Aquarius. It's moving slowly, conjuncting Mars. Mars gives us that energy to, make this kind of like even deeper. What do you think about that?
So Mars is our animal self. Mars is kind of instinctual behavior where we just act. And Mars is also like the warrior energy. So having Mars conjunct Saturn, it's kind of about setting boundaries too, because Saturn is limitations. Mars is our drive and energy. So usually when Mars is conjunct Saturn, there will often be anger versus authority figures or anything that we feel is restricting us. Restriction is Saturn. And Mars is like freedom, independence, whatnot. So any kind of like work scenarios or legal issues or things like that where there could be some headbutting towards whatever institution or whatever is limiting the Mars ability to move about freely.
Yeah, Mars and Saturn do not always like love each other. I always think of Mars and Saturn as that burning ember in the fire that's not quite set on fire, and it can't quite set on fire because it's still burning. You know what I mean? Like it's almost there, but like even if you threw paper on it, because that's how you get a flame started, it just wouldn't work. So it's almost like it's still there. It's wanting to do something, but it's being held back at the same time. So that's kind of like a metaphor I always see in that sense. So we'll move on to April. April is the next month. We have on the 4th, Jupiter making a conjunction with Pluto at 24 Capricorn. So Jupiter moves on to conjunct Pluto. Jupiter and Pluto, oh my goodness, in Capricorn. What are you thinking about that?
So this is the first of the 3 exact Jupiter-Pluto conjunctions. There's another one at the end of June and then one in November. So Jupiter's expansion, Pluto is power structures. Capricorn is self-accountability also. Jupiter conjunct Pluto is ethical use of power and expanding power within our own domain. And that's kind of the Capricorn self-accountability thing. I'm sure we will see many abuses of power in the news in that period, but it's kind of claiming or reclaiming our own power and expanding, building where we can have control of things. And, Pluto on the evolutionary astrology level, Pluto is death, rebirth, transformation. So you can also, with Jupiter being expansion, you can put that as, inner exploration of our own souls is another way that energy can play out, figuring, in-depth transformation on a personal level.
That's a very interesting way to put it, too, that transformation, that whatever we have held inside of ourselves, it's that deep transformation that comes to the forefront. And it's definitely inflated by that Jupiter energy. So moving on, we have this one I don't love. It's in April, is Mars squaring Uranus at 5 degrees Aquarius, Taurus. So this is always to me an accident signature. I would tell you guys, be careful around this time. See, in vibrational astrology, we believe that every planet has a function, and each function, every planet and zodiac sign has a function. I'm going to make a video about this, but and then each function can be interpreted into different symptoms. So the function of Uranus is being in the present moment. and it can be interpreted in many different ways. That can be interpreted in all the different archetypal and so on and so forth ways. And Mars is our energy, and that can also be interpreted in different ways. But if we're not directing our energy in the way that we're in the present moment, we're maybe doing something that we're not thinking about correctly. We're not thinking about in a right way. We might end up doing something that ends up being accidental. So I don't know. That's my little take on Mars square Uranus. But I don't know. What do you have to add to that, Mark?
I agree. So it can be very reckless, dangerous behavior. So I think like the proper use of that energy. Again, this is just personal philosophy. When I see big or difficult energy, or where there's like an excessive amount of energy that will need to be siphoned off, I take that energy and I do a bunch of crap that I don't want to do. It's all alchemy. I take the negative energy and I try to transform it. So I try to take that energy that would just make me antsy and restless, and I try to flip it to, taking care of a project that I don't really want to do. Or, using what could be agitation if you just let it sit there. And I have all kinds of different projects and stuff. So I just kind of take that and I transform that energy into something useful by like getting a bunch of crap done that I don't really want to do.
Yep, I'm similar in that sense where I will do something like go running because that's a very present moment type thing, and it's using that energy. But yeah, definitely that's what I try to do too. I try to burn it off in some way, but running is my thing. It may not be yours or whomever's, so that's kind of, but I'm always like in the mind thought of, because you can get lost in your running, right? I mean, I don't know if you know that or not, but I get lost in my running. I'm an Aquarius. What do you expect? But like, I'm reminding myself as I'm going, being present, because I don't want to like trip over a rock or something stupid, like be present with myself.
Right.
So it makes sense. Yeah, totally. So let's move on to Pluto stations retrograde at 24 Capricorn on the 25th of April. Pluto stations retrograde. What do you feel about that one?
Pluto stations twice every year, and those are always two of the biggest energy days of the year. Pluto is death, rebirth, transformation. With Pluto being in the sign of Capricorn, that's self-accountability. The Pluto station days are always big news days. There'll be lots of people being shown the mirror and being forced to deal with different situations. This will be of high visibility. Again, that's just like with the Uranus stations, the Pluto stations, usually we get the mass shootings, the big earthquakes, that kind of stuff, because Pluto is trying to evolve at a high rate. The Pluto energy, when it stations, is amplified. So there's lots of evolution going on at the Pluto stations. Some peaceful, some not peaceful.
Do you have any ideas of things that might be going on during that time?
Mass shootings and earthquakes. That's
really mass shootings and earthquakes.
Yes, I just studied the statistics on this, and that's just, I like to give you something big and fluffy. But so I mean, on a personal level, it can just be breaking through old patterns. It's transformation. Pluto is death, rebirth, transformation. But just some people and government institutions and whatnot, lack self-awareness, so that Pluto energy can come out in a very negative way if there's a lack of self-awareness. How about that for being fluffy?
Hey, that's super fluffy. I love it. Okay, so let's move on to May 5th. We're moving into May, okay. On May 5th, the North Node enters Gemini and the South Node enters Sagittarius. So North Node enters Gemini, South Node enters Sagittarius. So what are you feeling like going to happen while the nodes are in these new signs? What do you think that's going to be like the highlight?
Okay, so the nodes are our guideposts. They're our road signs. The nodes stay in a sign for about 2.5 years. So it's kind of roughly the same period as a Saturn transit. And also a point that the nodes are always opposite. The north and south node are always opposite, and they're the only thing that move downward in degrees to the zodiac. So it'll start off, instead of starting at 0 Gemini, it's going to start at 29 Gemini, and then move down. So again, the nodes are kind of guide points. They're road signs. So we'll be leaving 2.5 years of the north node in Cancer and the south node in Capricorn. North node is, in Cancer is, emotions, our home life, how we nurture ourselves. South node, career, workplace, societal standing. So this will be shifting to north node Gemini, south node Sagittarius. So north node Gemini is going to be, how do we think? How do we communicate our ideas? How do we mentally process things? How do we share information? Is there something better than Facebook to share stuff on? Are there better ways to communicate? That's going to be the Gemini portion of that. So kind of the difference between Gemini and Sag is Gemini can look at a lot of little details and get a quick judgment or a quick idea on things. Lots of the great quarterbacks in football and a lot of the great military generals during wartime and stuff have been Geminis because they can process a lot of information quickly. The south node Sag is like the ultimate big picture thing, the ultimate big picture sign. So that in Pisces probably. So the Sag is the good at getting a big overview. So kind of the balance between Gemini and Sag is not being disconnected. It's how do we use all the tidbits and bit of information that Gemini gets, and how do we feed it into and adjust the Sag, which is the big picture. So that's kind of the balance of Gemini Sag is improving our communication and filtering it through to modify what we understand the big picture is that's going on.
Like I look sometimes at the Gemini energy as the grade school teacher and the Sagittarius energy as the college professor, and it's like the college professor being in the south node being colored by the college professor, and then the north node being in the energy of Gemini being the youthful beginning part of our lives. So I think it's kind of like, yes, we're actually getting a chance to move from what we knew, what we were learning, this higher awareness, into this different new awareness, this new awareness that maybe wasn't there before. But I think it's kind of cool. It's giving us a chance to do this. It seems like as we're talking about this, and I've known this, but as we're talking about, the specific aspects that are going on and stuff, especially in the first part of the year, that it's giving us a chance to, it's almost, to me, and I don't really get into understanding much about portals, but it seems like it's a portal for us to really move ourselves into, and on an energy vibration level, with astrology. It's like we're getting doors opening where they weren't before, and we're getting new awarenesses coming. And I think that's kind of what that North Node in Gemini is giving us. It's like, okay, we're going back to school here. We're going to learn these new things that we weren't really given privy to in the past.
Yeah.
That's just a thought that I've had there. This is a really long show, and I'm loving it, you guys, but I think that we should go ahead and just finish through June, and then when I figure out, which I'm definitely doing in the next day or two, figuring out the video, we can do July through December on YouTube. I'm going to upload this to YouTube, so it will be there. It just won't be our cute faces. You'll just have to listen to it and see a picture of us, but I'll put a picture up there. But then we can do the YouTube, live. So I think that would be good. How does that sound to you, Mark?
Yeah, yes.
That sounds good. Yeah,
because we're getting 4 people in this position.
Yeah, we're running a lot, but I think this is cool. So I don't think we're boring people though. People seem to be talking in the chat room and everything seems to be happy. It's kind of cool. So I'm happy. Okay, so let's move on to the 11th of May is Saturn stations retrograde at 1 Aquarius. What's Saturn station retrograde at 1 Aquarius meaning to you?
So Saturn had just moved into Aquarius on March 21st. So this just kind of gives us, so again, when a planet stations, it's powerful, its energy is more powerful. So we just kind of got like a month and a half or, almost 2 month glimpse of what the 2.5 years of Saturn in Aquarius is going to be like. So shortly after this station, Saturn will be moving back into Capricorn. Or I guess actually July 1st, Saturn enters back into Capricorn while it's retrograde. So that will be, after May 11th, we will kind of review and relook at the things that we put in place at the new year, March 20th, right, when Saturn entered Aquarius, or it's 21st. So we'll kind of be re-looking and reevaluating the structure changes to our reality that we made in that period from March 21st to May 11th. And then when Saturn goes direct, and like at the end of Saturn re-enters Aquarius in December, it'll start hitting these points again of early Saturn in Aquarius, and we'll get like another chance to restructure the stuff we started in that March 21st to May 11th area. And again, Saturn in Aquarius is, building structures that are kind of outside of the box of what we previously thought things would look like.
Yeah, isn't it interesting, because what you're saying is, Saturn enters into Aquarius on the 21st of March, and then on the 1st of March, it retrogrades at 1 Aquarius, so it's really moving slow. So this is just showing you guys how slow, that's March, April, and May. I mean, it's mid-March to mid-May, so it's like 2 months that it took Saturn, because it is going to retrograde. When a planet is moving towards its retrograde phase, it slows down, and then it looks like it stops for a minute and goes the other direction from our earthly perspective. It doesn't literally do that, but from our earthly perspective, it looks like that. That's a retrograde, any retrograde. So it's kind of like, here it is, this slow-moving Saturn just decides to change and move directions on the 11th of May, when it just entered into Aquarius at 0 degrees Aquarius on the 21st. So it's kind of, this whole period, like Mark was saying, is like, this deep Saturn retrograde energy is coming to us, and that also happens on the flip side of the 11th too. So it'll be happening for a while. Yeah. So I mean, I think Saturn always, of course, tells us to let go of the things that aren't important and move forward, right? And get down to what's real, what's important to us, and I think that's a biggie, especially for people with planets around 1 or Aquarius or Leo, or any of the fixed signs, to be honest with you. So, yeah, okay, so moving on to May 13th, Venus stations retrograde at 21 Gemini. We have a lot of retrogrades going on in May. Wow. So what are you thinking about Venus station retrograde at 21 Gem?
So Venus goes retrograde for one short period every other year. So this just happens to be a year where we have a Venus retrograde and a Mars retrograde. Venus in Gemini is like how we communicate in relationships. And that can be relationships with our partner. It can also be co-workers, just anybody we interact with. So when Venus stations, just like when anything stations, its energy is amplified. So Venus things, love, romance, physical pleasures, food, anything that brings us happiness will be of importance. And so with that being in Gemini, it's going to be how we communicate with these different things or people. And since it's Gemini, it's a part, mental process as well. That's the skinny on that.
So moving on to 14 of May, we have Jupiter station retrograde at 27 degrees Capricorn. What are you thinking about that?
Jupiter rules money flow, and Capricorn is restrictions. So just in general, the 4 months or so a year that Jupiter's retrograde every year, money flow is a little bit tighter, and it's more about looking at how we spend money, and where our money, where our paycheck goes, that kind of thing. Capricorn is self-accountability. So with Jupiter stationing and in Capricorn, that retrograde period will be, looking at where our money is spent, where can we be more thrifty, where can we get more value or more to show for our money.
I also think that, Jupiter station retrograde gives us a chance to also think about what we believe in, what our personal philosophies are, definitely regarding, money, because I even think money can be spiritual in a sense, because if that's your ideals and dreams, then it is, it's, everybody's different. But, I think that that's a chance for us to kind of focus on that energy and not be trying to figure out how we're going to grow it, because maybe we don't grow it in that moment because it is station retrograde, but we are, and it's going to be retrograde for a month, but we are thinking about how that's going to happen and unfold for us in the future.
Right.
So, okay, so let's move on to June. June 5th, we have a lunar eclipse at 15 Sag, a lunar eclipse at 15 Sagittarius. So what are you thinking about that?
My kind of rule of thumb with eclipses is eclipses push things in the direction they're going. Sag is optimism, expansion. So what I always at least try to do is whenever there's some big energy coming up, eclipses push things in the direction they're going. I try to put something positive out there that I can push in the direction I want. So with the eclipses, with this eclipse being in Sag, that has to do with philosophy, higher learning, expansion, but remembering that Jupiter's retrograde at this point, I would not think additional outpouring of money would be good, but it would be more the other Sag stuff, the higher learning, expansion of wisdom, developing intuition, that kind of thing is how I would read that.
Okay, so moving on to June 18th, Mercury stations retrograde at 14 degrees Cancer. So what do you have to talk about with Mercury station retrograde in Cancer?
So again, this is Mercury starting to go backwards, and it's in a water sign again. So this is reevaluating, Cancer has to do with love and home life and self-nurturing and stuff too, but I kind of see it coming through a lot as the self-nurturing stuff, because we get so splintered and all over the place that people often forget to take care of themselves because there's so much noise and stuff out there right now. That to me, the Mercury in retrograde in Cancer is kind of okay, how do I make sure that I'm keeping myself running and that I'm giving myself the stuff that we need on an individual basis so that we can keep, giving outwardly.
Because if we don't, then we're having an imbalance there. It's super important. And while Mercury is retrograde, we do on the 21st, we have the solar eclipse at 0 degrees of Cancer. So the solar eclipse at 0 Cancer it's going to be kind of powerful, I think. What do you have to share with that?
So I zoned out there a second. This is a solar eclipse Cancer, right?
Yep.
Yep. Moon's in Pisces.
Don't worry, I zone out all the time.
It ain't easy staying in this body.
I know. I'm telling you.
Yeah.
I'm up in the ether somewhere. I don't know. You're swimming in the sea. I don't know.
So the eclipse is going to be in the same. So the sun just enters Cancer the day before that. We also have Mercury retrograde in Cancer at this point. So this is all going to be kind of similar to the Mercury retrograde. This is going to be self-nurturing. How do we, on the opposite side, how do we give to others? How do we, take care of our home life? I think those are all going to be like the normal Cancer themes. And again, eclipses push things in the direction they're going.
Yeah, it's going to kind of put us in the direction that we are headed for and giving us a chance to open up that nurturing side of ourselves, opening up that Cancerian energy. And, anybody with any planets in 0 degrees, especially 0 Cancer or Capricorn, will really feel this intensely. Eclipses, to me, are powerful. They're powerful, especially if you have a personal planet connected to one of them. I mean, any planet, but a personal planet especially. And personal planets are Moon, Mars, Mercury, Venus, Sun. Those are personal planets. So, really know your chart with this because it's helpful for you. So moving on to the 23rd, Neptune stations retrograde at 20 degrees Pisces. Neptune is going retrograde. And so we have this like Cancerian Pisces energy going on. So here in June. So what are you thinking about Neptune station retrograde?
So, I mean, that's kind of one of the themes here is, for this year, we have 2 eclipses in Cancer. We have a Mars and Pisces transit. We have 3 Mercury retrogrades in water signs. And then we have, on the other side, we have all this Capricorn energy. So I guess to kind of like big picture backup, we have all this water and then all this Capricorn earthy energy. So kind of big picture wise, it's just like balancing our emotions with what we, with reliability and what we physically can do. The Neptune stations, I think I mentioned earlier that as the planets station, their energy is really powerful for a week on either side. Neptune has nothing to do with our 3D reality. Neptune is communications outside of our 3D reality. It's our dream life, our intuition, our imagination. It's all the non-3D stuff. So I've noticed all kinds of weird phenomena around the Neptune stations. It is very easy for people and pets to pass away during these periods because people always say the veil of thin around Halloween, and okay, the definition of the veil of thin is a Neptune station. So things are very I find that I can't remember everything that happens around them. It's like everyone's asleep or under anesthesia for 2 weeks. And it's a great time to get in touch with the intuition and psychic ability and paranormal phenomena and stuff like that. But after looking back at like the Neptune stations for the last like 8 or 9 years, I've been paying attention to this part of the astrology equation. It's like I can never really remember the stuff that happened. Even if it's significant stuff, I can't really remember it. It's like we're in like a dream state for 2 weeks at a week on either end of the Neptune stations. So with Neptune being at 20 degrees Pisces, Neptune rules Pisces, which makes it even more powerful. Our psyche and psychic ability, all the non-3D stuff that makes up our reality is really at play during these Neptune stations. And the 3D stuff around us it's like things are flipped. Like the 3D stuff seems not real. And the dream life intuition part seems more real than our tangible 3D reality during these periods. And that probably made no sense whatsoever. But
no, it made sense to me. I mean, I think that it's a time in the year that we're going to dip into this veil, like you said, the other side of the veil. So I think that's part of it with all these retrogrades and directs that are going on. I think that's part of it. And I think that is an important part to, our psyche and ourselves that we have these times of like, I need to space out. You know, if we don't, then we're kind of like, it's too mundane and we never get that connection to source, right? Because that's when we're connected to source, through that Neptunian energy.
Yes. And so during those stations, we're more easily connected to source.
Right. Cool. I love it. Okay, so moving on, June 25th, Venus station direct. I love Venus retrograde, but okay, Venus is going to station direct at 5 degrees Gemini, and you know, we're winding up that Venus retrograde phase. There'll be a little shadow period after that, but you know, Venus retrograde being that time that we internalize our love, our hearts, our connection to what we love, and that hopefully you did a lot of work in that time period when Venus was retrograde on self-love, and now it's stationing direct in, you know, coming out of its retrograde phase at 5 degrees Gemini. It's giving us a chance to say, hey, okay, now we can be more social. Because Gemini is, let's face it, it's the social butterfly of the zodiac. You know, like we're going to come into that space of moving into, you know, here we are again. Here we're being social, open again. So what do you want to share about Venus station direct at 5 Gemini on the 25th of June?
During any retrograde period, it's reflecting, reanalyzing, relooking at things. Then with Venus going in direct, that's we take all so I believe Venus usually stays direct for about 3 weeks. So that is putting all the mental dissecting and stuff of things, of our relationships and stuff that we did the previous 3 weeks. It's moving forward and putting things into action going forward.
Yeah, I think it's a little more than a month. So Mercury, that's 3 weeks because it goes direct. It goes retrograde on the 13th of May and the 25th. Yeah. I'm a Venus retrograde girl, okay? So I just have to correct you.
No, you're correct there.
That's my ruler of the ascendant. So, okay. No, I'm not a corrector. I'm not a Virgo. I have nothing in Virgo. I'm just a Venus person, like, you know, anyway, so moving on. I'm being silly too, which is fun. So moving on, we have the 26th of June. We have Mars making a square to the nodes, 29 Pisces, Gemini. And, you know, that can be a heavy, intense kind of energy. I want to hear what you say about it, Mark. Mars squaring the nodes.
Okay.
On the anaretic degree, right? The anaretic degree being the 29th degree. Ugh.
That eclipse at 0 Cancer will be conjunct that then.
Yeah, I know.
On June 21st. Yeah, and that eclipse will be square my sun also. Okay, so 29 Pisces is the
bubble wrap that day.
Yeah, I will be doing that actually.
I will. Just don't make sure you don't suffocate yourself. Sorry. Side note of silliness.
Let's see. Where did I go here? Okay, so 29 Pisces is the last degree of the zodiac. It's the 360th degree before the rebirth, before the new cycle beginning. So, in evolutionary astrology, when a planet is square the nodes, that's called a skip step. So much like at a planetary station, when a planet is square the nodes, the energy of that planet is going to scream to be heard. It's going to be of additional importance. So Mars, again, is our action, energy, aggression. Right. So people in their birth chart that have a planet square the nodes, I assure you, if you look at charts, those whatever planets are square the nodes are going to be of focal importance. So just like when transiting planets are square the nodes, the Mars energy is going to be more relevant for everyone than it normally is, because that Mars is going to want to be heard. And so also Mars is at the last degree of the zodiac. It's at 29 Pisces. So this is going to be in general, the end of a 2-year cycle of, 2 years previously, Mars would have entered Aries. And so this is going to be a new 2-year cycle where Mars has gone through the entire zodiac and it's now at the last degree of the zodiac, and it's square to the node. So this is going to be like a changing point in energy, because not only is Mars at the last degree of the zodiac, but it's square the nodes. So if this hits anywhere in anyone's chart, I would think that this is going to start a new, like a rebirthing cycle, because right after this, Mars hits 0 Aries. And in fact, it's the next day on the 27th, Mars hits 0 Aries, and Mars rules Aries, and we're going to have a Mars retrograde in the sign of Aries, which it rules. And so instead of this starting a 2-month Mars and Aries cycle, it's going to be a 6-month Mars and Aries cycle that's going to last until July of 2020, or until January of 2021. So this is going to be, I would say this is going to be another one of the really big energy turning points for the year, because Mars is about to be rebirthed in its own sign, where it's going to be for 3 times the normal length. And during much of this period, Mars is going to be square to the Jupiter, Saturn, Pluto stellium. At multiple points, it's going to be square those. So this kind of jumped out to me as really one of the, not to mention it's, a few days after the Venus station and a few days after the Neptune station. So this is really like a kind of a monumental energy shift on how we apply our energy.
I mean, I think that this is going to be an interesting time for a lot of us, especially in coming to a space where we want to express our nodes in some way or another, like whether it be, I always look at the nodes as of course, where we were, where we're coming from, and where we're going, and then there's this whole traveling space in between. And I feel like, Mars is giving us the energy to do that, whether or not we have a planet that's making that connection or not. I think it's giving us a chance to go from the space of, that where we were and into, where we are, and giving us a push into that direction. Make sure we push it into the direction that we want it to go, as opposed to something we're struggling with though too, because I think that's important for us to remember. Yeah. Okay, so the last aspect that we're going to talk about for June is Jupiter conjunct Pluto at 24 degrees Capricorn. So Jupiter conjunct Pluto, what are you feeling about Jupiter conjunct Pluto?
So this is the second of the Jupiter-Pluto conjunctions for the year. I mean, this is this is a week out from the Neptune station and the Venus station, and Mars square the nodes, and Mars entering Aries. So again, this is the Jupiter is expansion, Pluto is power. So this is feeling out our power boundaries. This is claiming our power, expansion. Again, just this whole period, this end of June period, is just a tremendous amount of stations. And there's an eclipse, 2 stations, Mars entering its sign, Mars square the nodes, and then the second Jupiter-Pluto conjunction. I mean, it's the energy shift is going to be colossal during that week, kind of 10-day period. The energy shift. So just on a general philosophy note, when I see that much energy in a period, and this also applies to when I have a return going in, like a Jupiter return or a Venus return or a Mars return, where a planet's coming back to the degree it is in my chart, I try to start those periods off good. I try to set habits that I want to be able to sustain. I try to, things that I've wanted to change but haven't been able to. This is one of those doorways where there's so much energy and there's so much stuff that can be redirected. I want to start those big, powerful energy cycles out with good habits or better habits or improvements or trying to make big changes for the positive, because there's just so much energy in that 10-day period. I mean, it's we have 6 major things happening between the 21st and the 30th. I mean, that's craziness.
Right.
So I try to push everything in the right direction and getting it going to where I want it to go, because there's just so much wind at your back and so much energy to transform at that point that I want to use that for my benefits and to push things in the direction I want them to go.
Yeah, so that would be like your advice, I guess you would say, for, this time period?
Yes, I try, yes. When there's that much stuff happening, I want to push things in the direction I want them to go, because there's change coming, and there's change coming for everyone at that time. I want to, I cannot, the thing that I hate about our culture at this point in time is there's just so much victimization and disempowerment that I want to take that and try to flip it, because it's easy to feel like such and such is working against me, or this planetary energy is working against me, or whatever. But when there's this much energy, I want to take it. I want to make sure that I'm at least giving a good effort at pushing it forward in the direction that I want it to go.
And it's almost like, the beginning of the year in January, just to kind of recap this whole 6 months we've been talking about, is kind of like stripping us down and building us up into something new, reforming us, and then coming along through, some difficult things and some, good things through a few months between January and June. And then June comes along and we're having the opportunity to like kind of express it. So looking at it on a grand scale, it's almost like, we're going through this metamorphosis, and we're going through it whether we like it or not. We have to focus ourselves on the things that we really do want to make happen for ourselves, as opposed to just fighting against it or just going with the flow and not making a plan for ourselves.
Yes, totally agree.
So is there anything you wanted to add about this, 6 months, this first 6 months of the year?
I mean, there's a lot of really big energy bumps there. And the second half of the year is probably more intense than the first half, because we have 6 months of Mars and Aries. So that's essentially pouring gasoline on everything.
Yeah, I agree. So, okay, so this was an awesome show. Thank you so much, Mark, for joining me and being my partner in this. I love it. I love that we did the show. I know it's been like hugely long, but I'm going to try to get it on YouTube so that we can have it there, and then we'll do the next one on YouTube, because I will definitely have figured out the software before then. And I really thank you all for listening and watching listening, because you haven't watched because we're not on video. But thank you. It's been so awesome, you guys. Have a wonderful, new year. Mark, thank you again for being my buddy and my partner. And we will see you soon to do the later half of 2020. You guys hang in there and enjoy this new year, and make sure that you think deeply about what you want to do as far as making yourself grow and making yourself transform into what you really want, turning the next chapter of your life. So, yeah. So, okay, thanks a lot, you guys. Have a great one. Bye.